Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome back to another Tuesday of Reading with Raptors. Today we are here with one of our resident red-tailed hawks who we call Alula. She's been here at the Raptor Center for about 14 years, if I'm recalling correctly. She is with us as a companion for reading a book called Somewhere Today by Bert Kitchen. So it has a lot of really great illustrations of not just raptors, the cover, of course, a great pick for today, but has a lot of different kinds of birds, which is always really exciting to kind of see what other birds and other animals are out there in the world doing all sorts of great natural activities. This bird just ate a big chunk of rat, so you might see her cleaning off her beak, cleaning off her feet, doing some stretching and preening. I'll try to point it out as we go along. Before we get started too, I wanted to make sure to mention I put a link in the description of this video. If you are looking for either things to do with your friends or family or your other kind of crew that you might be virtually gathering with, or maybe looking for some gifts to send people's way if they are interested in raptors, I put a link in the description to our Sponsor a Raptor program that does help support a lot of the education birds who do live with us full time, as well as helping to support a lot of the birds who are visiting us in the clinic. We actually just posted a story yesterday about a snowy owl who is down in our clinic at the moment. So we have a lot of birds coming in for the winter who are starting to see some of those more winter species. So keep an eye out for that, and lots of ways to help support those birds who are coming in and support those veterinary bills that they just are not paying. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, let's get started with Somewhere Today. Read about what animals are doing out in the wild. It's pretty exciting. If I can get to the first page. Here we are. We also saw some wonderful natural behavior just now of a red-tailed hawk eliminating some waste. Always fun. All right. Let's try to scooch. There we go. Somewhere today, a sea otter is floating on its back for lunch. The sea otter is found along parts of the Pacific Ocean. Here, I'll scooch so you can see the picture because it's a lot of text. Here we go. The sea otter is found along parts of the Pacific coast and around its offshore islands, from the Bering Sea to California. Though it rarely ventures into water more than 65 feet deep, it does live almost exclusively at sea, mooring itself to a convenient bed of seaweed to sleep and floating on its back to eat. It can even drink seawater. The sea otter feeds on clams, sea urchins, mussels, abalones, and other mollusks, or shellfish, breaking their shells against a rock that it carries on its chest. Where are we going? Not sure what that was about. We were sitting really cozy. The book? Let her kind of settle in. What do we think? Not sure where we think we're going. Maybe I'll scooch slightly further away for right now. See if that helps us feel more comfy. I had her in here for a few minutes before we started just to kind of hang out and sit around. Let her kind of look around. See if we can keep going. No? Is it the book that's scary? Those of you who have been following us here at Reading with Raptors know we've had Alula here on a few times, so I'm not really quite sure what exactly is up. Maybe there's some kind of noise or something else that she's looking at that maybe is a little bit different than usual. Let her kind of settle in here. See if we can keep on reading about sea otters. She did just eat a large chunk of food. What is that? Are we in a weird spot? She did just eat a large chunk of food. You might be able to see when she turns her body. She's got kind of a big, looks like kind of a big kind of bump out on her chest where that whole big nice chunk of rat is sitting. We're kind of restless after eating. Unsure. Keep an eye out. See if we can keep reading here. Otherwise, maybe we'll relocate slightly. Unsure. Always fun when doing live videos with live wildlife. Never quite know what's going to happen. So we'll see if we can keep going. All right, where were we? So I'll start the sentence over since we kind of got distracted. The sea otter feeds on clams, sea urchins, mussels, abalones, and other mollusks, breaking their shells against a rock that it carries on its chest. It needs to eat about 20 pounds of shellfish meat, or 1/4 of its own weight, every day. Unlike other marine mammals, sea otters don't have any insulating layers of fat. Pockets of air held within their dense fur enable them to float and keep warm. So here's a picture of that sea otter with a nice big shellfish and a rock that it kind of has on its belly. You can see these big flipper feet. You can see those probably wouldn't be very good for moving around on land. So living kind of on the rocky coastal shores of the Pacific Northwest. I will say too, something that the book doesn't mention, there we go, that the book doesn't mention is sea otters actually have the densest fur in the world. So in terms of kind of hairs per square inch of skin, they have the highest number. Don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but they have the densest fur for keeping that warm air trapped against their bodies. All right, seems like we're settling in a little bit here. There we go. Somewhere today, a pair of western grebes is running over the water. The western grebe of North America has short wings and almost no tail at all. Unlike most water birds, which have webbed feet, the grebe has stiff, horny fringes on each of its 3 front toes. These large lobed toes work as paddles on or below the surface of the water. When 2 grebes are courting, they perform a series of elaborate water displays. These include the mating run, shown here, when male and female rise up and rush over the surface of the water. So this is this magnificent display that these western grebes do. You can see these have very long necks, so they have kind of really sturdy bodies, as a lot of our kind of water birds do, with these kind of short, really kind of back-tilted legs, and these specialized feet that make it really easy for them to kind of run over the water. So they kind of use their wings to propel themselves up and run over the water, their long necks arched. It's part of their courtship display. So we'll see that in the spring. We have a foot-tucked red-tailed hawk behind us currently, so kind of settled in here. Somewhere today, a chameleon is reaching out for food. The Jackson's chameleon lives in East Africa, from Uganda to Tanzania up to northern Mozambique. The chameleon is famous for its ability to change color, often merging with its surroundings. Less well known is the fact that it can shoot out its coiled up tongue to the full length of its body. This makes it a formidable insect catcher. The chameleon has superb eyesight and can move its eyes independently to look in 2 directions at once. When it has spotted a likely-looking insect, it takes aim with devastating accuracy. Its tongue, which has a sticky pad on the end of it, shoots out, picks up the insect, and recoils all in a split second. So this is that chameleon with that very long tongue. You can see this wonderful camouflage that it has with this really long tongue reaching out and sticking onto that little, looks like kind of like a grasshopper sitting on one of these leaves. So chameleons, they're using their excellent eyesight. Actually, here I'll point out too, these eyes up here, they kind of have these ridges on them, letting them move them independently, so they can move their eyes kind of in 2 directions at once, so they can be really seeing what's going on. Reminds me a lot of raptors, who really rely on their excellent eyesight. Somewhere today, an archerfish is taking aim. The archerfish lives in India, Australia, and the Philippines. It prefers the brackish water, kind of partially salty water, around mangroves, but is also found in the sea and in fresh water. The archerfish cruises along just below the surface of the water, looking for insects on the leaves or stems of overhanging vegetation. When it finds an insect, it squirts drops of water at it to shoot it down. Adult archerfish can aim accurately up to a distance of 10 feet. So you can see here is an archerfish using this kind of jet of water. Up here is a little bug. It kind of looks like a ladybug, but it's kind of sitting up on this little leaf overhanging the water. So from underwater, it's able to shoot water up. It hits the insect, and then the insect falls down into the water where the archerfish can eat it. So these are really very talented hunter fish. Very unique adaptation. Somewhere today, two bald eagles, talons locked, are plummeting through the sky. The bald eagle of North America, symbol of the United States, is an enormous bird up to 3 feet long from head to tail. Its powerful, outstretched wings can measure as much as 8 feet across. It isn't really bald at all, but owes its name to the dramatic hood of white feathers on its head and neck, which gives it a bareheaded look from a distance. Each year, the bald eagle returns to the same mate, renewing its courtship with a spectacular display of aerial acrobatics. Two eagles lock talons and fall through the sky, tumbling and somersaulting. Seconds before reaching the ground, they separate and soar up high again. So here you can see this beautiful mountain landscape. Maybe this is also somewhere near kind of Alaska or the Pacific Northwest, where you have these two bald eagles kind of locking talons and kind of tumbling down through the air. You'll also see some similar behavior for kind of territorial displays. If you have two bald eagles who maybe don't want to be sharing the same territory, where they'll use their talons to try to drive each other off, and they might end up kind of locked together that way too. So sometimes in the spring, or kind of late winter into the spring and summer, we'll actually see a few bald eagles, usually a couple a year, brought in here to the Raptor Center for medical attention after maybe this sort of display or territorial battle has maybe gone a little bit wrong. They end up crashing down onto the ground and are found by some helpful individuals. Somewhere today, two brown hares are boxing. The common brown hare is found throughout Europe and Africa in open country, farmland, and woods. The hare can run amazingly fast, 45 miles an hour at full gallop. But its sporting activities are not limited to running. When a female hare is being courted by a male, she often boxes with him. So you can see they're standing up on these big long legs. This is usually how you can tell a rabbit apart from a hare, is rabbits have these very long, powerful legs, and then they're using their front legs to kind of box at each other, to kind of show off, hey, I am very strong and very good at being a hare. So this is them in that big kind of open country. Of course, here in North America, we have some similar species to the hare. We have rabbits and hares as well, usually further out west, kind of in the western and southwestern portions of the United States. Somewhere today, a spotted skunk is doing a handstand. The western spotted skunk lives in an area extending from the western United States to central Mexico. When faced with a dangerous enemy, the skunk will throw itself onto its front paws, stretch itself up to its full height, and display the distinctive black and white markings on its back. This is a threat, a warning of what is to follow. If it fails to deter the potential attacker, the skunk will turn around, still upside down, and direct a well-aimed, foul-smelling spray at it from special glands under its tail. So you can see here there's a fox hiding in these bushes that might be trying to eat the skunk. The skunk saw it and is displaying, showing off these incredible markings on its back. It looks like this fox did not get the memo, and the skunk has now turned around, ready to spray that really stinky smell. Maybe most of us have probably smelled something similar. It's ready to spray it from underneath that fluffy tail, which is really incredible. Some other special posing. Somewhere today, two spectacled salamanders are striking a pose. The spectacled salamander, which lives in western Italy, is usually at home on well-wooded mountainsides, close to clear streams. For the most part, it lives a nocturnal life, but it occasionally emerges in the early evening or during the day if it has rained. It is the only European salamander to have 4 toes on each foot. When threatened, the spectacled salamander exposes its brilliantly colored belly to deter its enemy. To do this, it might curl up its tail or, much more dramatically, fall on its back with its feet in the air, playing dead. So here you can see these two salamanders. One is showing this bright red tail. The other one is kind of fully on its back, showing this beautiful red color. Maybe there's some sort of predator just over here beyond the corner of the picture. Might be displaying at that animal, making sure, hey, you don't want to eat us. We do not taste very good. We're bright red. Usually really bright colors in the animal world, bright colors usually mean I don't taste very good. You don't want to eat me. I'm probably even poisonous. Ooh, this one's exciting. Somewhere today, 2 dung beetles are rolling a ball across the sand. The South African dung beetle is related to the sacred scarab of Egypt and the Mediterranean countries. Dung beetles work in pairs. They collect animal dung or waste, shape it into a ball, and roll it to the place where the soil is suitable for its burial. Dung is food to the dung beetle. The female beetle lays her eggs on the dung ball so that her larvae have something to eat as soon as they emerge. So we have 2 beetles who clearly are excellent at recycling, who have found this ball of dung or solid waste, and they're rolling it along this kind of big open, dry, desert-like sands. They're going to find a really good place with soil to be able to kind of bury this down in the dirt, and then they'll lay eggs inside of this. So that way those baby beetles have a good meal as soon as they hatch, which is really important for kind of giving them a really good start to life. So very important recyclers. Ooh, another kind of desert species. Somewhere today, a sidewinding rattlesnake is making tracks. The Sidewinder is found in the deserts of the southwestern United States, Nevada, Utah, California, and Arizona, and also northern Baja California in Mexico. A Sidewinder doesn't travel forward in a straight line as other snakes do. It moves by throwing its head forward in the direction it wants to go, but keeping its body sideways. The body loops and flicks, The body loops and flicks forward in response to the head movements. One advantage of this way of traveling is that the only part of the snake is touching the hot sand at any one time. So this is a way of keeping cool and probably making a good, efficient trail across these sifting sands that you see, these sand dunes in the background. If you've ever tried walking on big, loose piles of sand, you know it is really tricky. So here we have our Sidewinder rattlesnake flicking its head over and kind of looping its body to follow. So this way it's not constantly slithering on the sand, it's kind of just touching it for a moment at a time. So really clever way of moving that this rattlesnake has. So you'll see these very distinctive tracks. You can kind of see the imprint of the snake on each one. Until, of course, the wind blows that really loose sand and blows them all away. Somewhere today, a blue bird of paradise is hanging upside down. Prince Rudolph's blue bird of paradise inhabits the rainforests in the mountains of southeastern New Guinea. When he wants to attract a mate, the male bird gives a series of bugle-like calls. Then he hangs upside down from a special courting branch with his brilliant plumage or feathers spread out and his tail straps held in graceful curves. He swings to and fro and utters a peculiar grating call. Altogether irresistible. You can see him, you can see this bird hanging upside down, so it's holding tight onto this branch. This beautiful kind of bib of feathers that they're able to extend out with these very interesting color patterns, and then a lot of these kind of plume-like feathers coming out from the sides. And then here are 2 very long, very unique feathers that kind of stick out from above the tail, that kind of, when they're hanging upside down, kind of arc. There, you can see a little bit better. You can see the female, who of course has these beautiful kind of blue-green wings, but not nearly this kind of very flashy, specialized plumage or feathers. Birds of paradise are really fascinating. They have all of these feathers and can have all of these feathers that you'd think would make it really hard for them to survive out in the wild with predators, because these birds on New Guinea didn't really have any kind of ground predators. There weren't really any kind of ground mammals that most of us are really familiar with, like cats or foxes or coyotes, things like that. They didn't really have that. So you can see a lot of these really wild feathers that these birds of paradise have, which is really fascinating. And finally, somewhere today, a dormouse is sleeping. The common or hazel dormouse is widespread in the forests and gardens of Europe. This tiny creature eats as much as it can during the summer, building up fat that it can live on during the cold season. At the beginning of winter, it builds itself a leaf and grass nest under fallen leaves, between tree stumps, or in a pile of wood. Then it curls itself up into a ball, wraps its bushy tail over its body, and settles down to sleep for as long as 9 months at a time. Here you can see this cozy little dormouse, all wrapped up in this little nest that it's made. It's got this fluffy little fuzzy tail that it's wrapped around its body, it's holding on to, all nicely tucked in for the winter. In some parts of Europe, that winter can last quite a long time, can get pretty chilly. So this is a pretty common mouse that has this excellent survival tactic for during the winter. I know sometimes I am very jealous of these hibernating creatures as it gets a little bit colder here in Minnesota. So that has been Somewhere Today, and that is written and illustrated by Bert Kitchen. I thought that was a great, nice, very global book. I loved how it had all those different species from all around the world. I think it's really interesting to think about all of those different kinds of animals living in different places and facing a lot of different environmental challenges, having those really cool behaviors and physical adaptations to really kind of overcome those. Red-tailed hawks, on the other hand, are really common throughout here in North America. You can't find them anywhere else in the world, so you can only find them kind of on this half of the globe. You won't see them in Europe or Asia or Africa or Australia. But you will see a lot of kind of similar kind of cousins of the red-tailed hawk in a lot of those parts of the world. Actually, one of my favorite things to look at, if you like to look at bird lists like I do, what you might notice is if you're looking at this kind of hawk, we call them boodio hawks for big soaring hawks. The kind of scientific name for that kind of big soaring hawk is called the boodio hawk, or the boodio genus of hawks. If you look at that list, you might notice that some of the birds are called hawks, like red-tailed hawks, and some of them might be called buzzards, like the rough-legged buzzard, which here in the US we call the rough-legged hawk, which is really interesting. In the kind of other half of the world, in Europe, Asia, Africa, those birds, those big soaring hawks, their word for those is actually called buzzards, which here in North America we usually use to mean vulture. When people who spoke English were kind of traveling from places where they had big soaring hawks like this one, and they called them buzzards, when they arrived here and were trying to figure out English names for some of the birds that they were seeing, they saw things like turkey vultures soaring around and went, "Oh, I know what that is. It's just like a buzzard that we have at home." Come to find out that that turkey vulture or turkey buzzard is actually a vulture and not a hawk, but it means that we call these big soaring hawks hawks here in North America, but buzzards in other parts of the world. That is a fun thing that I like to think about. So some of the birds that we have here that we share with our kind of North European and Asian neighbors, kind of across the Arctic Circle, like the rough-legged hawk, they also are called rough-legged buzzards in other parts of the world. I just think that's really cool to think about. I talked about last week, I was talking about how it's so cool that birds really don't have borders because they can fly, right? So even if we have kind of our natural borders of mountains and big lakes and rivers, birds can just fly over them, right? So they're able to be found all over the world because of this. And so we have lots of different interesting names for all of these birds because they're living in places where we speak a lot of different languages. Words mean a lot of different things, which I always think is really cool. Ooh, somebody was asking in the chat, I have a large, fabulous hawk on my property. How large of animals do they eat? This one in particular is asking about their dog. So this red-tailed hawk, you might have seen as she's kind of moving around a little bit, she has quite a large wingspan. Her wingspan's about 4 feet across. This bird, I weighed her earlier. She weighs 1,600 grams, which is round about 3 to 4 pounds. That's all the bigger that she is. And this is a fairly large red-tailed hawk. So especially for kind of here in the kind of Minnesota area, but depending on where you're at, that's still a pretty good size for a red-tailed hawk. So normally raptors can only lift up and carry an animal that's about half of their body weight. So for a bird like this, even though she's great at flying, really strong wings, really strong legs, she can only carry about 2 pounds, absolute maximum. So normally the kind of prey that red-tailed hawks are going to be looking for are things like mice and rats, maybe some rabbits. Usually squirrels are a big favorite. So they're usually looking for animals quite a lot smaller than any of our kind of domestic dogs or even cats. That being said, always good to keep an eye out if you are in an area with lots of wildlife. You also have lots of domesticated animals who are out and about. If you have a particularly small animal that you're worried about, keep an eye out. There are lots of different animals out there who might cause them problems. But for the most part, red-tailed hawks are much more interested in those small, relatively defenseless animals as opposed to a dog that has those kind of big, strong teeth and really good kind of hunting instincts. So you usually want to avoid those, but I'll never say never worry, but usually they're not very interested in those kind of smaller dogs or cats or things like that. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to scroll through and see if there are any other questions. Usually people are curious. So this particular red-tailed hawk, she lives with us and has for almost her entire life because she actually has some scarring in her eyes, thought to be caused, and kind of all the evidence points to it being caused by the West Nile virus, which is a virus that people can get as well from mosquitoes. But red-tailed hawks and a lot of other birds can get it as well. And in hawks in particular, what we see oftentimes is that it can affect their eyesight. So this bird, like I was saying earlier, she has great flight muscles, she's able to fly and move around quite well, she does a great job here, but she's not able to see well enough to survive on her own out in the wild. So that is why she lives here with us at the Raptor Center and has been teaching people now for over 10 years. I want to say probably closer to 14 or so for this bird. So that's why she lives with us. We call her Alula after a really important group of feathers on birds' wings. So most flying birds have these Alula feathers. And red-tailed hawks, they're a pretty important group of feathers. They're only sticking out right now. Sometimes I can kind of point them out. But they're kind of attached to the bird equivalent of your thumb. So when birds' wings kind of fold in like this, kind of the joint that you're seeing, what kind of looks like her shoulder, those are actually her kind of bird equivalent of wrists. And so right there's a little group of feathers that attaches to kind of the bone remnant of the thumb, so that when birds are kind of coming down to land, so they'll go from having their wings flat, and as they land, you'll see they kind of tilt those wings forward to help slow themselves down. But just like if you are maybe in a plane or something like that, you may know that if you slow down your speed, you can actually kind of what's called stall and kind of fall out of the air. You stop being airborne and you just fall out of the air, which is no good, right? If you're a red-tailed hawk trying to land on a branch or trying to swoop down and grab a rabbit on the ground, you don't want to fall out of the air. You want to land with a lot of kind of strength and power to grab onto that rabbit, right? So what you need to do is increase the surface area, kind of the amount of wing area that you have, even though your speed is going down. So if your speed is decreasing, you want to increase your surface area, and they can do that by extending their wing with those Alula feathers that poke out. Kind of like if you're in a plane, you'll see the plane kind of tilt the back part of the wings down, and you'll see those little slats come up on the sides. Those are kind of the plane equivalent of an Alula. So birds figured it out first, obviously, and have done a great job of perfecting those feathers, but you'll actually see that. So sometimes you'll see pictures of birds or videos of birds as they're landing. You can keep an eye out for those Alula feathers kind of sticking up there, kind of at the middle of their wing, right at kind of the bird equivalent of the wrist joint. So really important feathers for all birds. They have an actual special shape to the feathers. I wish I had pulled one out. There's a special kind of shape to the feathers where they're kind of extra stiff in the middle and have kind of a little curve to them. So that way they're really able to kind of resist the kind of wind flow that's happening. So really strong, stiff feathers that are great for kind of catching that wind as they're slowing down. It's just phenomenal. So very talented adaptations for these birds to be able to not only fly through the air, but then also slow down and stop too. It's an important part of flying, is being able to land without falling out of the air. I'm gonna make sure we don't have any last questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up here for today. Thank you all again for joining us today. Saw a little restless bit of Red-Tailed Hawk, but now she's got her foot all tucked up underneath those nice toasty warm kind of belly feathers. They're great for insulation, especially on a kind of colder weather day like we're getting into now that we're into December. Again, if you are interested in learning how to get some more kind of up close and personal videos with birds in them, check out the link I posted in the description for this video for our Sponsor a Raptor program, which, side note, make for some pretty great gifts if that's a thing you're looking out for. Otherwise, you can also check out our website at theraptorcenter.org for more information about the birds that live here with us, the work that we're doing, and to kind of get updates on what we're up to with our kind of online video and programs. You can also keep an eye out on this page and on our Instagram page as well, which is also the Raptor Center. You can keep an eye out for more bird videos and things like that. I know we've had a couple of surprise Facebook Lives that we've been doing throughout the week in addition to Reading with Raptors, so make sure that you're following this page and keeping an eye out for more of those. Got some last minute preening here that our Red-Tailed Hawk is doing as she's finishing keeping those feathers nice and clean and orderly, doing a little bit of preening here. All right, with that, we will sign off. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you again next week for more Reading with Raptors. Bye, everyone.